I'm joined by Eva Chipiuk, and welcome to a daytime version of our live stream talking about the Trucker Commission. Eva, great to see you again. How you doing?
Oh, nice to see you. Nice to be home. A little bit tired, but just the beginning, I think.
Yeah, well, we just wrapped up the public hearings, as in the sworn witnesses and the subpoenaed documents and the cross-examinations, but the Trucker Commission is not yet done. There's going to be a public policy phase and other things, but the drama of the last month has come to a close. Eva, you were one of a number of lawyers from the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedom and other freedom-oriented groups, including our friends at the Democracy Fund. How long was it? I mean, you were out there, half of the civil liberties lawyers in Canada, by which I mean Democracy Fund, JCCF, Canadian Constitution Foundation, and even the Liberals at the Canadian Civil Liberties Association finally thought they'd wrap up their 2-year vacation and engage in the Freedom File, thankfully. Tell me what it was like actually being a lawyer associated with the commission. You were granted standing. You were given early access to privileged documents. You were given interactions with the judge. And of course, you cross-examined witnesses. What was it like?
I don't know where to start. I can't believe it's all come to an end. It feels like it just started and then it was just a daily grind. It was 31 days nonstop of evidence. And, you know, when we are having long days like we did, and then you're still preparing for the next day. And of course, my clients were a huge focal point in all of this. The protesters, the reason everything came to head as these protesters came to Ottawa to hear from their federal government, and we know how the federal government responded. So this was all about whether or not this was justified. You asked a few questions and quickly in the intro, and getting all these documents, like you said, we did. But the way this was set up and how quickly this all transpired, it was hard almost to assess everything that was happening as it was happening. I think I'll be decompressing, and we're all going to be thinking about this for months and possibly years to come.
Let me ask you, do you think it was, I mean, we'll see what the report says. We'll see what the judge's findings are and what any recommendations are. So, of course, we don't know how it's going to end. I mean, it could go a number of ways, but the process itself is an outcome, a sort of outcome, having police answer questions under oath. And I think generally the police told the truth, having politicians under oath. And I frankly think generally the politicians lied. I'm sorry. That's just what it looked like to me. Lied, or at least evaded, avoided, talked out the clock. I suppose that's different than lying, but there was lying too. I think in general the process was positive, and anyone who looked at it directly or through the filter of Rebel News or other freedom-oriented groups probably learned a lot. But there really are two solitudes: reading the coverage in the Toronto Star or the CBC or Global News, which has just become the worst media outlet in the country. It's hard to believe. They're engaging in revisionist history of this Trucker Commission, just like they engaged in revisionist history of the Trucker Convoy itself. So although I think the Trucker Commission was very useful, if your only source of info about it was the Toronto Star or Global News, you remain in the dark about what was really happening. That's my thoughts. What do you think?
Yeah, no, it's unfortunately still the same. People are watching two different movies, and that's how it was since the beginning of the protest in Ottawa. Truckers going to Ottawa, if you looked at some of those mainstream media outlets you were talking about versus social media, it was a completely different story. And then it's unfortunately still the same. So what we've learned, I hope, is that you really need to get firsthand information, number one, be way more involved, be way more active, really investigate things for yourself. And I really hope at least that is something that people have learned throughout the process. And I agree with you very much. It was really interesting to see the police give evidence, and also senior officials. So not the politicians, but senior levels in government, at least on a municipal scale. It was quite different to see what they had to say.
Mm-hmm. Well, listen, we have a half dozen clips of your own involvement, and I'd like to show that. Like I say, you were granted standing, you and other civil liberties lawyers. So there were a lot of lawyers there, and sometimes the cross-examination of politicians or police was, you had 5 minutes or 10 minutes. And frankly, you ask one question for a minute. Every politician worth their salt can give a 4-minute evasive maneuver. Let's go through. We've got a half dozen clips. Let's just belt through them. The first one was when you were asking Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister. That must have been exciting. First of all, that you not every lawyer had a chance to have a go at Trudeau. You asked him, I think, questions. I mean, you sort of knew he was just going to duck speak his way through things. So you put more thematic questions, less sort of legal cross-examine-y things. Here, let's show the first clip, and I'll show people what I mean.
People have testified in this inquiry referencing your widely published comments and calling the unvaccinated racists and misogynists. And we have heard testimony in this inquiry about how some of your officials wanted to label protesters as terrorists. Would you agree with me that one of the most important roles of a prime minister is to unite Canadians and not divide them by engaging in name calling?
I did not call people who were unvaccinated names. I highlighted there is a difference between people who are hesitant to get vaccinated for any range of reasons and people who deliberately spread misinformation that puts at risk the life and health of their fellow Canadians. My focus every step of the way, and the primary responsibility of a prime minister, is to keep Canadians safe and alive.
I'm not sure if the primary job of the prime minister is to keep me alive. I think if that was his job, I'd be dead by now. He's really not good for much. Even being a substitute drama teacher, he didn't finish his full term. He's a wicked liar. Of course he called people names in English and in French. He even said, should we tolerate them? I think you've got to be a bit of a sociopath to tell a bald-faced lie like that. Your next one, again, it didn't go to the technical legal matters of the Emergency Act, but I think it summed up their insane response to, oh my God, working class people, they're so grubby and dirty. Maybe they have guns in their trucks. Deploy the tanks. These people, here in King's Landing, we only have sophisticated people with fine silk suits and expense accounts for lunch. Here come the Walmart people. Here come the gun-owning people. The peasants are storming the Capitol. Trudeau despises ordinary people. He's an elite, son of an elite, son of an elite. 3 generations since the last Trudeau actually worked for a living. And here's your question. Why are you so afraid of people? Here, take a look.
Minister Blair, Public Safety Minister, Minister Mendicino, National Security Intelligence Advisor Jody Thomas, and RCMP Commissioner Brenda Lucki, and today you testified that the federal government was committed to exhausting all alternatives to a resolution prior to making a decision to invoke the extraordinary powers of the Emergencies Act. Do you agree that that accurately describes your government's position?
That the invocation of the Emergencies Act was a measure of last resort, was not something to be taken lightly.
Thank you.
And something to do when other options were not effective.
And you are aware that the OPP, along with others, developed an engagement proposal, and you were advised of that proposal at the IRG meeting on February 12th, correct?
It was a proposal, but we had, and it was presented to us, we had more questions about how it would actually work. It was not a complete proposal.
My last question, Mr. Prime Minister, when did you and your government start to become so afraid of your own citizens?
That's a very unfair...
I am not, and we are not.
Those are my questions.
I think he is. I think he is afraid of people. He deployed. They talked about deploying the army. They talked about tanks. They deployed hundreds, maybe thousands of riot police. They stomped people with riot horses. They invoked martial law for the first time in 50 years. Of course, he was afraid of people. I think he was actually more, to be precise, he was afraid of what the people were doing that they were politically finding their voice. I don't think he was afraid of them physically. I don't think he was afraid of them, as a danger to sovereignty. Like the Emergencies Act is built for when the prime minister is afraid. Are you afraid of danger to groups of people? Are you afraid of revolution? It is for prime ministers who are afraid for the country. I don't think Justin Trudeau was actually afraid for the country. I don't think he was afraid of an insurrection. He was afraid that these working class people were embarrassing him because they weren't obeying him. So he was afraid of losing face, not afraid of them.
I very much agree. And his own evidence says that. He said there was a threat or a potential for the violence. So he confirmed in his own evidence there was no violence. There was a potential for it. Of course, there's a potential for violence any day, anywhere you are. And then if you heard Chrystia Freeland's evidence too, somebody was mean to her. They weren't violent towards her. Yeah. They said mean things to her and maybe an expletive body language. And it was a woman trucker, all in addition. Yeah. So when you hear the evidence that they were giving, it goes exactly to your point. It was an embarrassment for them more so, and a threat of losing control, which they did.
Yeah.
Clearly.
I want to get through a few more clips. You had some great little exchanges with him. Here's one where Trudeau says, I wish I would have done more. Well, what more was there? I mean, he actually shot our reporter, Alexa Lavoie. His bodyguards physically beat up our other reporter, David Menzies. I mean, the only thing that they did not do was actually deploy the tank, though they certainly seem to talk about the Canadian Armed Forces a lot. Let's play clip number 3.
You have now heard the statements from some of the many concerned Canadians who felt compelled to support the protesters. Do you now understand the reason so many Canadians came to Ottawa with such resolve in the midst of a harsh, cold Canadian winter because of the harms caused by your government COVID mandates, and they wanted to be heard?
I am moved. And I was moved as I heard these testimonies, as I saw the depth of hurt and anxiety about the present and the future expressed by so many people. The COVID pandemic was unbelievably difficult on all Canadians. And my job throughout this pandemic was to keep Canadians safe. And the way that I chose to do that was to lean on public health officials, lean on experts and science on the best way to keep Canadians safe. And because Canadians got vaccinated to over 80%, we had fewer deaths in Canada than places that didn't reach that. And every heartbreaking story I hear of a family who sat beside the bed of a loved one dying because they had believed that the vaccines were more dangerous than the disease, I take personally, because I wish I could have done more
and I don't
convince
mean
people
to cut
to
you
get
off.
Vaccinated.
I wish I could have done more to save lives. I saved so many lives. Of course, that doesn't talk to the use of the martial law. I don't know if martial law would save one life. I don't know if it would save any lives. I think, you could shoot more people more easily. You can deploy more guns. I think he's a sociopath. I don't know. What did he make of him? He's got that, when he starts talking, his sexy voice. And he hopes that people can feel the raw emotion of the substitute drama teacher. And this is an opportunity for us to all reflect on being women respecters and respecting visible minorities. And this is an opportunity for you to learn not to wear blackface. This is an opportunity for you to learn not to grope Rose Knight in Creston, BC. This is really an opportunity for all Canadians to improve themselves. Like he just gets in this drama teacher mode, and he changes from being the decider who made a terrible decision to like some third-party observer, as if he's not the central decider. He has this really gross way of doing things, and it seems to work. For 7 years, he's skated. I'm worried, Eva. Is it Eva or Eva? I like saying Eva, but how do you say it?
It's Eva.
Eva. Sorry about that. Eva, I'm worried he's going to skate. I'm worried that dramatic thespian voice of his and the media party, they're lapping it up. I'm worried that no matter what the judge is, I think the judge is going to say he had no legal basis for it. I think the judge, unless this judge is so completely in the tank for Trudeau, there simply was no evidence that this met the legal requirement from Marshall. There was none. There was none.
None.
Every cop, every person who knows security, like there was no security threat. There were no violence threats. There was just none of it. All he has was, well, there was a potential. I don't think the judge is going to come back with anything other than there was no legal basis for it. But I think Trudeau's going to skate because he's going to roll out his heartfelt message track like he just did there, Eva.
Yeah, I don't know what to say about that. Like watching it back now, I didn't imagine that he would go on a tangent like that, but I guess I should have seen it coming. What else was he going to say? And we knew that this was just for him he was going to be trying to score political points. Like it wasn't going to be about the law, because that's not something that he's really qualified to speak on anyway. But I do hope that the commission, like we were talking about earlier, is an opportunity for people to see firsthand what was going on. And maybe they can start to see the disconnect between this government and what they're doing and their talking points and reality. It was very much fiction over facts, in my opinion. Feelings over facts is what we learned, the reasons behind invoking the Emergencies Act.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, most of the media in this country is very feelings oriented, and they're feeling grateful to Trudeau for bailing out their failing TV stations, radio stations, and newspapers. So they're all about feelings also, and Trudeau makes them feel warm and fuzzy. Eva, I'm grateful to you and your fellow lawyers. There was some great lawyering done. I really believe that if the freedom lawyers, that you and the rest of the team from the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms, if the freedom lawyers and the Democracy Fund were not there, this would have been a very, very different commission. It really would have not had so many important interactions with the national security deep state, which is very rarely subjected to scrutiny. So on behalf of Canadians, let me thank you and your team for that. Eva, great to catch up with you. And thanks for joining our live stream so many days over the last month, as you and the rest of your team did. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. It was great to be on and getting the truth out. So happy to, and so happy to be part of the team.
What you just saw was an excerpt from my nightly show, The Ezra Levant Show. Every weekday, I do a monologue. Usually it's about half an hour. Then I interview an interesting guest, and then we read my hate mail or my fan mail, whichever is more fun. It's only available behind a paywall, though. That's how we pay our bills here at Rebel News. We don't take a dime from Justin Trudeau. But the good news is it's only $8 a month, about half the price of Netflix. And in addition to my nightly show, you also get weekly shows from 4 other friends here at Rebel News. So you're getting 36 shows a month just for $8. I think it's worth it. And even if you're not quite sure, do it anyways, because we rely on viewers like you to keep us free and independent. I promise you I'll never take a dime from Trudeau. Just go to rebelnewsplus.com and click subscribe.